Hey guys, I've got a page in my traveler's notebook today and I'm going to use the March Life Crafted kit from Citrus Twist, and I'm also using both the clear and the digital version of the Weekend Life stamp set. I made this cut file and I'm going to show you how I did that. So I've just opened a new document in the Silhouette Studio software and I'm going to go and grab the digital version of this stamp, which is here. It's a PNG file, so I'm just going to drag it into Silhouette Studio, and you can see it's super small. So I'm going to just, holding down the shift key, drag this out. I don't know what size I want it yet, but let's make it big enough so that we can see it to trace it. So go to your trace palette and just select trace area, and I'm going to drag a square over the stamp. You can see it picks up all of that super nicely, so I'm just going to go trace, and then I can delete the PNG file. Now, just to make things a little bit easier for you to see, I'm going to fill this in white, because what I want to do next is make these lines a little bit thicker. Obviously when it's a small stamp, it's fine to have little lines like this, but if you want to use it as a cut file, it makes it a tiny bit easier to fill in that cut file if these lines are a bit fatter. So the easiest way to do that is to go to the offset tool, and I'm going to choose offset. And again, just so you can see this, let's fill it in black. So you can see the offset line is black, and my original cut file here is in white. So the offset one's a little bit too big for me. I'm going to change it to sharp corners rather than rounded corners. It won't make a lot of difference at the moment, just because of the original tracing of that very small stamp. And then I'm just going to adjust the size of this. And I think sort of like that. It doesn't look like too much at the moment, but if you go ahead and apply that and then drag your original one off, you can see that you've got a much fatter line, and it's going to make that filling in really, really easy. Then I'm just going to go ahead and resize this, and I'm thinking something about maybe about 3 inches. Maybe sort of roughly 3 1/4 inches, and I can delete my original one and then just go ahead and cut this with my Silhouette. Okay, so once I had that cut file cut out, and you can see here I cut it from black cardstock, I knew what size then to resize my photo so that it fits into the main little portion of the cut file here. I just super roughly cut that out just with some scissors, and then what I want to do is cut sort of a notch out of the bottom of it so that I can fill the back with pattern paper, because the like digital stamp here, it has a wee fold over piece at the bottom. So I'm just going to use a pen on the front side here just to cut out both pieces so that I can fill those with pattern paper, and then it will look like my photo is on the top leaf of this notepad and there's pattern paper underneath. I wasn't quite sure the best way to adhere this all down because I'm using photo paper, and it is a pretty thin little cut file that I've made here. So I did use just some PVA glue and sort of fandangle it around so that it fits, the photo fits behind it, and then I can use some pattern paper from the Life Crafted kit to fill in the background pieces of this cut file. Now at this point I hadn't really made any sort of commitment to a colour scheme for the page, but this sort of teal pattern is one of my favourites from the kit, and I have already used most of it, so I've got this little scrap piece left. It made sense to use that one there. I'm going to use the same pattern for the top and bottom. But what I'm going to do is just fill in the sort of bottom triangle portion of the cut file and leave the little flip up piece blank, so that when I glue this all onto my page, the white page will show through, and so it kind of is a cheat way of filling in that cut file like that. My notebook is brand new, so it's a little bit bulky. I'm just going to clip that shut for now, just because I want to do a little bit of stamping. Actually, I'm going to do quite a lot of stamping, because apart from using this cut file, the rest of the page is pretty much going to be stamping. I have just added some double-sided tape rather than tape runner just because everything's still a little bit wet and I want to make sure it sticks down nice and good. I'm going to pop that onto the right hand side of my page and then use some of the stamps from that same Weekend Life stamp set. I'm just going to build a kind of title. I haven't used the stamp set before, so I am going to sort of test the stamps on a little scrap piece of paper first. It helps to sort of season them, I guess. I do use a sand eraser on brand new stamps if they're sort of like a bit more solid. These are all just little text stamps, so I find just stamping them off a couple of times helps to sort of season the surface of them, and you get a nice crisp stamp when you go down to stamp it on your page. So I've built my title under there with 3 little stamps, and then what I'm going to do is use the actual clear stamp version of this note paper and build a grid over on the left hand side. So what I want to do is I've built my grid 3 by 3, and then I'm going to start sort of scattering them across the page so that it does look like the note paper is sort of falling down towards the photo. Now I completely forgot about that clip there and went to stamp this one down here and did a terrible job of it. Luckily I can tidy it up a little bit with a gel pen and it's barely noticeable. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the cut file with each of these little stamps. So I'm going to fill in, not the tiny little triangle piece at the bottom, that would definitely be far too fiddly for my impatient fingers. I am just going to fill in the top piece of the stamp, just to add a little bit more color to the page. And there's probably lots of ways you could fill this in. You could have colored it, watercolored it, but I decided to add just a few of the papers from the kit. And like I said, I hadn't actually come up with any sort of color scheme at this point. I was just playing around. I've trimmed out a few pieces from a few different patterns, but in the end what I'm gonna go with is just a kind of monochromatic color scheme, I guess, mostly just using all of these sort of teal papers. So I am using the same teal that I used for the cut file, plus I cut down one of the stripes from that stripy paper up on the right there, just trimmed out the teal stripe from that, and I've got this grid paper which is sort of a cream with the teal grid lines on it. So I'm going to use those 3. I'm definitely not going to make you watch all of this because it was a little bit tedious and did take a long time, but I'm just trimming out tiny little strips that fit in there, and I'm going to glue those down with PVA as well. Once I worked out it was much easier to use my tweezers, things did go a little bit faster. And you can see here I'm almost done. I've got one left to do. I'm just trying to scatter the colors around the page rather than having the same colors next to each other. I'm just trying to move them around the page, and I really love how this worked out. It really does look like the pages of the note paper are just falling down the page towards the photo. Now my last simple little addition to this page is going to be some of these puffy hearts, which are my absolute favorite thing from the kit. I'm going to create sort of a cluster of 3 just to create some sort of visual triangle on here, and again I'm keeping everything pretty monochromatic and using all of the different teals that there are here, just sort of swapping them around, varying the sizes and the like darknesses of the teal. I've got one down by my title, one on the left hand side and one at the top here, and that's this page all done. I love having a clear and a digital version of a stamp set like this. I just really love how this page turned out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye guys.